The prairie wind howled against the wooden planks of Jacob Holloway's cabin, carrying with it the lonely cries of coyotes and the scent of rain-soaked earth. Jacob was a cowboy through and through, hardened hands, weathered face, and a quiet soul that carried the weight of every mile he had ridden across the wild frontier. He lived alone on his land after losing his parents to fever years back, and while neighbors were miles apart, he never forgot the unwritten law of the West. You take care of your own, even if blood doesn't bind you. That was why on one fateful evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, he found himself standing in disbelief on his porch as a young woman, stumbled down the dusty path leading to his home. Her dress was torn, her bonnet gone, her face streaked with tears and dust. She carried nothing but a look of desperation. "Clara?" Jacob muttered, recognizing her as the bride who had only weeks ago been married to his neighbor, Hank Thompson. Hank was a man Jacob never trusted, sharp with words, quicker with fists, and the kind who drank more whiskey than water. Still, Jacob hadn't imagined he would abandon his wife. Clara's lips trembled as she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of heartbreak. "He left, Jacob, packed his horse and rode off this morning. Said I was nothing but a burden. I don't know where else to go." Jacob felt his jaw tighten. He had no love for Hank. But seeing Clara's eyes brimming with tears lit a fire inside him that no storm could put out. He stepped forward, steadying her by the shoulders. "You're safe here. Come inside." The cabin smelled faintly of wood smoke and pine. Clara stood by the hearth, her hands trembling as she warmed herself. Jacob busied himself brewing coffee and slicing bread, giving her time to breathe. When she finally spoke, her voice broke like a fragile dam. She told him of Hank's cruelty, of the way he had ignored her needs, and how he had left without warning, chasing gold in the mountains with no intention of ever returning. Her words hung in the air heavy as lead, and Jacob felt a familiar ache in his chest. Life on the frontier was hard enough. No woman should bear it alone, much less abandoned so callously. "You can stay here until we figure things out," Jacob said firmly, his eyes steady on hers. "No one will harm you under my roof." The following days unfolded quietly, almost tenderly. Jacob went about his ranch chores, mending fences, feeding stock, and hauling water, while Clara helped in the cabin. She swept the floors, cooked meals, and hummed softly as she worked, filling the once silent cabin with a warmth Jacob hadn't felt in years. At night, as the fire crackled, they spoke. Clara told him stories of her childhood, of the books she once loved, and the dreams she had carried, before her marriage had crushed them. Jacob listened more than he spoke, but every word she shared etched itself into him like carvings on stone, and slowly something unspoken began to stir between them. One night, as a storm raged outside, thunder shaking the timbers of the cabin, Clara confessed what she had held back. "Jacob, I don't think Hank is ever coming back. And truth be told, I don't think I want him to." Her eyes glistened in the firelight, vulnerable yet steady. Jacob swallowed hard. He wanted to reach out, to take her hand, but the weight of honor pressed heavy on him. She was still another man's wife, even if that man had forsaken her. So instead, he said softly, "Then we'll take it one day at a time. You're not alone anymore." In that moment, lightning lit up the cabin, and for the first time since her arrival, Clara smiled, not the weary smile of survival, but the tender smile of hope. Neither of them could have imagined how that choice, that quiet act of shelter, would soon shock the entire town. By spring, whispers had spread through the settlement. Folks talked when Clara was seen riding into town with Jacob, her hair tied neatly, her face glowing with a newfound strength. Some said Jacob had stolen another man's wife. Others claimed Hank had run off for good, and Clara was better off. But most just watched, curious to see how long the arrangement would last. Jacob, however, paid no mind to gossip. He only cared that Clara was safe and that she was smiling more each day. Still, the frontier had a way of testing every fragile piece, and soon enough, the storm they feared rolled in. It was late afternoon when the sound of hooves thundered down Jacob's trail. He stepped onto the porch, rifle slung across his arm, and there he saw him, Hank Thompson, gaunt, unshaven, and wild-eyed from weeks of chasing fortunes that had left him empty-handed. His gaze landed on Clara, who stood just behind Jacob, and his face twisted with rage. "You!" Hank spat, his voice venomous. "You dare stay here? With him?" Clara trembled but stood her ground, her voice ringing clear despite the fear in her chest. "You left me, Hank. You left me with nothing but broken promises. I won't go back." Hank's hand twitched near his holster, and for a heartbeat, the air hung heavy with the threat of violence. But Jacob's voice cut through the silence like steel. "She's not yours to claim anymore. Hank, you forfeited that right when you rode away." His words were calm but carried the weight of thunder. The two men stood locked in a deadly standoff, the crackle of the wind the only sound between them. Hank's eyes darted, fury burning, but he saw the steadiness in Jacob's stance, the unyielding protection in his gaze, and for the first time Hank faltered. With a curse, he turned his horse and rode off into the fading light, leaving dust and bitterness in his wake. That night, as Clara and Jacob sat by the fire, the cabin felt different. It was no longer a place of refuge, but a home reborn. Clara reached for Jacob's hand, her touch soft yet certain. "You stood for me," she whispered, "when no one else would." Jacob looked at her, his voice low. "I'd stand for you 1,000 times over." In that moment, the silence spoke louder than words. The fire crackled, shadows danced on the walls, and two souls once broken found something whole again. News of the confrontation spread quickly. Some were shocked at Clara's courage, others at Jacob's defiance, but all agreed the bond they shared was something fierce and unshakable. And in the heart of the frontier, where life was hard and love was rare, that was more shocking than any gunfight or storm. Jacob had taken in his neighbor's abandoned bride, and together they had written a new story, one of resilience, redemption, and a love no one had expected. So, dear listener, if this story gripped your heart the way it did mine, if you felt the sparks of courage and the warmth of love blazing inside that little cabin, don't forget, there are many more tales waiting to be told. Hit that subscribe button, join this journey, and never miss the next story that just might change the way you see the world. Would you like me to make this even more cinematic and voiceover ready, with dramatic pauses, suspense hooks, and emotional beats, so it flows perfectly as a YouTube narration?